people, think about what a really cool icebreaker that would be. Like, I share my information with you, so we have a digital representation of everybody called a Phunware ID. Yeah. And if I did a swipe, and as long as you enabled it, because you have to opt in, I could see kind of different interests with people, different things they were attending in AR and an AR experience, and I can literally have on my profile 3 fun facts about me.
What is up, guys? Welcome back. I've got a new guy here that I'm super excited I just met.
Appreciate
Randall Crowder.
That's right. Hey, man, pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Man, this guy has done a lot of stuff. Like, I didn't know, but like this guy already took the company public, believe it or not.
I don't know if I did it well. I'm doing a lot. We'll see. Time will tell if I'm doing it well. We'll see.
It's not even like it's a pink sheet. It's like it's on the NASDAQ.
Yeah,
you guys literally went live on the NASDAQ. You said
last December. Yeah. So the long road. So we went actually with a cryptocurrency offering in parallel. So a lot of conversations and a lot of kind of Q&A with the SEC on what does the whole kind of next stage of crypto look like for mainstream companies. So for us, going public was easy. It wasn't easy in terms of the mechanism to go public, and it took a lot of lawyers and a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of late nights. But when you think about like blockchain and crypto, we were just talking about it before we started about the colorful characters.
Yes.
There's a need for transparency and credibility in blockchain that we don't have just yet, and so you have so many people that lost money betting on people who had fake social media accounts. They were never even a real company, and it looked good, but exactly a good white paper, and then that was it. And so for us, part of being public is trying to bring that credibility back to the space, to tell them, to tell the public, to tell unaccredited investors and accredited investors alike, here we are. You can research anything you want about our company. We've been around for 10 years. We have a long history of engagement, both with large brands and with consumers. I'm easy to find. The founder, Alan Natowski, is easy to find. Our entire team, we have over 150 employees, all working hard to try to build something special. We have 4 offices, and so hopefully, as people kind of begin to look at like the next wave of real world solutions for blockchain, they'll first look to real teams with real experience.
100%. And I won't get back to that, but that's really key because what we had in the past is like a lot of ideas. Yeah. A lot of dreams.
Not a lot of execution. Not a lot of execution.
Right? So, unfortunately, we even had talent.
Yeah.
But the talent didn't know how to execute.
Yeah.
There's one thing having a great idea and being a bright mind and actually putting the foot down and finding solutions. Yeah. But I want to hear a little bit of like the creation story. Like, how did you get started? How did Phunware come to be? And how do we get to here?
Yeah, absolutely. No, so Phunware, it's an interesting personal story for me. So 10 years ago, I met the founder, Alan Natowski, in Austin through just a random meeting that I didn't even know if I was going to take. But I was doing a lot of angel investing. Yeah. He was moving from Newport. I heard he was a serial entrepreneur, and he had kind of said, hey, look, I think I'm going to hang up the hat and become an investor and really kind of work to train the next generation. So like, great. So I met with him over coffee, and there are certain people who you just know are born operators. They're not ready. They're not ever going to hang up the hat. And so I told him at the end of that meeting, I said, there's no way you're ever going to be an investor. You are just a creator. You want to be at the forefront of innovation, and you're never going to stop. And he's like, no, I really do. Literally, maybe a week later, he called me and said, I got an idea for a new company. So I actually helped out with the first seed round 10 years ago to start Phunware. Fast forward 10 years later, Phunware built the first NASCAR app, the first NFL app. We still build and maintain most of Fox's apps. And the thought in the very beginning was, people were just figuring out web, 10 years ago. Yeah. Mobile wasn't a thing. Less than, 5% of internet content was consumed on mobile at the time.
The first iPhone, I think, was 2007.
Exactly. And so the idea in the beginning and the first slogan of the company was everything you need to succeed on mobile. So it was taking large brands, forklifting them off of the web and onto a mobile, platform, because the mobile phone is probably the most valuable, resource on the planet to a brand because it's always attached to a human being. Yeah. And that's who they're trying to reach. So we started doing that at first, building custom, enterprise mobile applications that would engage consumers for large brands. And then what we realized is to do that well, we had to build a lot of software to rinse and repeat that model. And so we started saying, well, why don't we license our software to other people who are also trying to do the same thing so that we become more like a software as a service company. Gotcha. And so as we started putting software on more phones, and we also have our own kind of DSP and SSP, which helps us place ads and kind of monitor ad traffic across mobile ecosystems, we started seeing a mountain of data. So we see about 5 terabytes of data every single day. We've generated over a petabyte of data, and literally we're seeing activity from 1 billion active devices a month. And so we kind of thought to ourselves, why don't we take all that data and give brands a better way to build audiences? Because like right now, you ask, what's your strategy? Well, I buy Facebook ads. Well, what do you get for that? I have no clue. And that's the sad truth.
There's one company that controls most of the traffic, and
exactly.
that takes a cut on everything.
It's Facebook or Google. There's an old quote by John Wanamaker. He's often referred to as the father of modern advertising, and he says, I lose half of my money in advertising. The problem is I don't know which half. And that's still a problem today. $51 million a day is lost to ad fraud alone. It's $19 billion a year. Ad fraud alone. That's not even considering
so that's like clicking ads. It's like fake
click farms, bots, spiders, even abandoned accounts. There are real Facebook accounts out there that people, Facebook is serving up impressions on that nobody's watching.
And then skews the results, and then somebody might actually turn off a winning ad.
Exactly. So our business is all about, I said it in the last panel. I said, in a world of nonsense, credibility is king. We are going to move. Think about what's happening in the social. You had one of my dear friends, Dan Fleischman, on, and what he's forgotten more about influence and social media than most people will ever learn. Yeah. But we're already migrating away from influence. So remember, we had celebrity, then we had influencers. Now we're moving to micro and nano influencers, and it's all about engagement. Because the reality is, you can tell me you have 10 million followers, and the first thing I think is, how many of those are actually real?
Or how many of them care? Like if it's a girl,
exactly.
Like share booty pictures does not mean you actually care about what you're saying.
Exactly. So what we're trying to do is say we're going to take all of our data, all the devices we look at, and we want to create verifiable audiences. Mm-hmm. So we know not only that you're a human being and that you're legitimate, but we also know a little bit about you, but not in a weird, nefarious Big Brother way. Yeah. It's like, listen, ask me. I'll tell you whether or not I like a certain brand. I'll tell you whether or not I'm in the market for a car. Right. If you provide value to me, I'll provide value in return. The reality is everyone is getting paid off of your data except for you.
Right.
So why not take control of your data?
You don't have the option to say, like, I will opt in to give my data out.
Now you do. So that's why we launched Phuncoin. So Phuncoin, you can go right now. You can go to basically republic.co/Phuncoin, and you can actually purchase it today. It's basically, they got their real start in crowdfunding. Okay. So regulation crowdfunding is a way for certain cryptocurrency projects to at least get started introducing it to unaccredited investors. So I quite frankly, selfishly, I wanted my employees to be able to participate. So we have a Reg D for accredited investors, and the rich keep getting richer. So we said, well, I want my employees to be able to participate as well. So let's have a Reg CF in place that gives them the same price that we're giving institutional investors. Yeah. And so that's what it should be. I mean, there should be a level playing field, and I think that's the power of blockchain and decentralization as a whole. It's the idea that these intermediaries in the middle, whether it's a bank, whether it's a Facebook or a Google, look, they're trying to make a buck. Yeah. And they don't always have your best interest in mind. And so how do we start to disintermediate that to where the internet allowed us to transact information. The blockchain will allow us to transact value, and it'll have an immutable ledger that, so with our platform, I know who it is, I know who they advertise, who advertised to you, I know the actions you took in response to that advertisement, and we can build this virtuous kind of ecosystem between the brand and the consumer, where if you give me value, I'll give you value. And now we're all on a level playing field. It's I call it, instead of getting data through exploitation and surveillance, you're getting data through collaboration in return for compensation.
Amazing. Yeah, so just to recap your story a little bit, so you started as more or less a software development shop,
yep.
And then you said, you know what, instead of just getting paid as a certain, getting paid every time we make an app, let's license it out. So
Absolutely.
we went from
software as a service.
software trading to software as a service to then, you know what, the much bigger place, the data itself.
Data as a service.
So that's kind of like the ascension of Phunware. Amazing. And then you
and along the way, we talk, and this is something that you said that I thought was, you're spot on where the industry's headed. How do we begin to leverage AR, VR? So along the way, we started responding to RFPs where people said, well, listen, if you have a mobile phone, what else can you do with that? So we became one of the #1 companies in the world tracking a phone indoors. And so that same functionality you get outdoors with like GPS, we deliver that indoors. So if you need directions in a hospital, we did a proof of concept on a cruise line that basically Uber Eats for a cruise line. You can enjoy your cruise and we'll bring you beer, food, whatever, wherever you are in time and space. Exactly, and so, but indoors. And so now you can start turning on all kinds of use cases, especially with AR and VR, where you can now tie a person indoors or outdoors to a geographic area that has all sorts of interesting things that might be valuable to you as a customer. So, because think about how much latent information is in a phone. You have all this information at your fingertips, but in your day-to-day life, how many times do you really engage with technology? You go to the grocery store. Maybe you cross an RF signal to open the door. Maybe you swipe a credit card when you leave. Other than that, it's a very dumb experience. Technology should spring into action. As you walk through this life, technology should be informing you in a very elegant way, not spamming you with alerts and nonsense, but saying, hey, based on something that you did in your past, machine learning says, I think you would be interested in this. And every time it happens, you should be like, I am interested in that.
Or like I go into the supermarket and I say like, you know what, I'm on a paleo diet, and then it shows me like a little map through the store, like pick up your stuff. Like, here's
Have you heard about this new product that actually just got released? That's an incredible new addition to the paleo diet.
Sale just for you on this specific item.
Absolutely.
And it maybe even like it expires in like 1 minute.
That's what we're doing with Phuncoin. So we're basically saying we want to compensate people for profitable behavior. So take an example like Carnival Cruise Line. They have a profitable behavior that says if they can get information into the hands of their passengers in the moments leading up to them boarding the ship, they're more likely to make a sale. You think, that makes sense. You're excited to get on the ship, you're excited to go on a cruise, someone tells you about zip lining, you're like, sure, let's do it. But it's a very analog way in which they do that. It's signage, brochures, maybe a representative running around asking people as they board the ship if they're interested. But now you're kind of being sold. People like to buy, they don't want to be sold. And so what we do with our technology is we know when you're arriving at the parking lot. We maybe hit you with a push notification that says, hey, for 1,000 Phuncoin, or if they would like to brand it themselves for 1,000 Carnival coin, would you be interested in watching this video on all the amazing excursions that we'll have available for you on your trip? You think, sure. So you click on it. We know that video converts at like 80% or greater, and so now you're watching. Exactly. Now you're watching someone ziplining. You're watching someone riding a horse in the ocean. Your kids literally like pulling at your jacket, like, let's do that, let's do that. And like that's what Carnival wants. They want to give you the information when it matters to you. Now that might be a different conversation if you're sitting at home, the kids are screaming, you're trying to get the kids out to school, you're trying to make lunches, and you see a video on an excursion, you're like, oh, that looks interesting, but I don't have time for that right now. And then you forget. Think about how many abandoned carts there are on e-commerce. How many times you got the right information at the wrong time or in the wrong place. So if you can take all the information in the virtual world, curate that, and then inform real-world interactions at the right time, in the right place, in the right place with the right person, you can change the game with how brands engage consumers.
I'm just having like so many connections to be made because I just talked with Dan, and there's some connections going on. Because when I talked with Dan, he talked about connecting the virtual world to the real world.
Yes.
And something that just came to mind with abandoned carts is I cannot remember the last time I saw an abandoned cart in a real store because there's a shame factor.
Yeah.
So
that's
retail
interesting.
Stores,
that's a very intuitive thought.
Retail stores have a certain heads up, but what they're lacking is over the past 5 years we've been like mastering like copy and funnels and all that kind of like sales psychology.
Yeah.
They can integrate with funnels. With AR.
Yeah.
Because just like we said, like when you go to a landing page that says, "Hey, our offer expires in 30 seconds. Sign up now." A store doesn't do that right now, but it could.
Yeah.
The app says, "Hey, we got offer." Like you walk in, it's almost like a challenge.
Yeah.
You got to put it in your cart, and nobody's gonna take it back out of the cart.
Yep.
So there's crazy
That's
things
interesting. I like
we can do with AR. When it comes to the normal retail space, kind of revitalize it.
Yeah, and that's what I think we forget, because brick and mortar isn't sexy, and we live in a world that's driven by the Amazons and Alibabas of the world, and we think that in our mind you almost get the sense that it's taken over. But we forget that it's not the majority of purchases made. The majority of purchases made are still brick and mortar. There is still a huge book of business, and do you really think Walmart's sitting around going, geez, I guess we lost? No, Walmart's trying to figure out how to eat Amazon's lunch, and every single brick and mortar store is trying to figure out how to innovate. So we talked about this over in the Watchers booth. We kind of said, wouldn't it be cool if you could introduce that Christmas morning-like feature or that Christmas morning-like sentiment in a retail setting where you're at a store and all of a sudden, to your point, you get something because you were there, and you'll never get that anywhere else, and you get it for a certain period of time. So you have that diminishing returns if you don't do it. So I think there's a huge way to gamify real-world interactions using virtual world information.
And I think that's what people crave. Like right now we want comfort, but real-world interactions will become fewer and fewer, where I think that is another benefit. Yes, nobody is going to maybe some people are going to the grocery store to meet people, but not really. But some human interaction will always be desired. So we can make it enjoyable to go out and meet people. Because at this point, there's almost no reason to leave the house anymore. I can have Amazon Prime LA is same day delivery. I can get Ralph's 2-hour food delivery. It's I can get anything I want.
Absolutely.
So,
which even that's changing. It's really interesting to see. I mean, you're already starting to see kind of a backlash against social media. Younger generations are becoming increasingly aware of the insidious side of social media. There is, Facebook is losing, the younger generation.
Parents and grandparents on it.
Exactly, and that is true. It's not the cool factor anymore. So if we as innovators are trying to think of, what's next, that's what we have to think about. How do we, I don't think, and I hope not, we're not becoming, pod people just sitting at our home and never interacting with the outside world. I think that there's almost a little bit of a calling for me and our team to just what's the Nintendo, the Wii, actually Pokemon Go, one of the original reasons was to get kids outside of the house. So I want to do that with brand engagement. I want to get people off of a phone or a computer and get people into the real world doing things that are meaningful and delighting to them in new and unique ways. And so we're looking at ways to connect people differently, actually enabling conferences. So when we say any of this, we kind of talk about a Phunware-enabled experience, a Phuncoin-enabled experience. So how can we take blockchain and what we do as a software as a service business, marry the two, and change the way we interact, whether it's at a conference, at a museum, at a theme park, in a hotel. There's all sorts of opportunities to delight consumers that are kind of relatively untapped right now.
Yeah, 100%. So, 2 questions.
Yeah.
One, how long do you think it will take for AR to become so massive up to practical?
Yeah.
And secondly, how would you recommend companies take advantage of it?
I think it's the use case. I mean, it's got to be what people don't, and we keep talking about social media influencers. They do understand stickiness and engagement, and Dan talks a lot about this thing called omnipresent. How do you create this kind of momentum inherently in whatever it is you're doing? AR, VR by itself is a cool idea, and even Pokemon Go, it was kind of cool for a second, and then it dropped off. There was not a need to keep doing it. So what is you have to have a real company with a real marketing strategy that has a reason for something to keep existing. And so the way I always talk about it, what is persistent? So think about the apps on your phone. People, install and uninstall apps constantly. 100%. Your finance app, even though you use it maybe once or twice a month, it never leaves your phone. I've had my finance app since I've ever had a finance account. Or just banking. Your banking app. My banking app sits on my phone forever because the time when I need it, I need it. And so when you think about AR or VR, there's got to be something that gives you a reason to engage in a VR, AR experience routinely. And that's where
stickiness.
Exactly. So that's why we like that video I showed you, where if you had if I was walking down the street and I could pull out the Phuncoin app and then just do a quick 180-degree view and actually see real-world brand engagement. So rather than placing a Pokemon Go somewhere, a brand places some sort of an anchor or a hook to some sort of real-world brick-and-mortar experience, or even just an opportunity. It almost becomes like a treasure hunt. It becomes this very interesting.
You're excited to be the
exactly.
because you don't know what you'll find.
Exactly. People need, if we can we're all kids at heart. And I think
Yeah.
if you can bring back that fascination with exploring and learning new things and get outside the world and to see what's out there, or people. I mean, you can literally do the same thing with people. Like, who's around me right now? Is anybody else did anybody else attend the Global Hackathon? Is anybody else a technical attorney? Is anybody else whatever? And being able to find that with AR and VR and engage with people. Think about what a really cool icebreaker that would be. Like, I share my information with you, so we have a digital representation of everybody called a Phunware ID. Yeah. And if I did a swipe, and as long as you enabled it, because you have to opt in, I could see kind of different interests with people, different things they were attending in AR and an AR experience, and I could literally have on my profile 3 fun facts about me. What a great way to break the ice with somebody. I could see somebody across the room, they're sharing that information with me, and I could walk with them. You climb Mount Kilimanjaro? Cool. Now all of a sudden we're having an engagement. Whereas before I would just walk right past them. I don't know what to say to them. I don't have any common ground with them.
And sometimes you would never know that person actually has a lot in common with you.
Exactly.
And that applies both in professional and even dating. Like you could be a bar, like do quick skin, who's actually single, who's actually into the same stuff.
Absolutely.
Or a professional event, like you're just looking for a tech guy, skip all the service providers.
Exactly. I think that'll be when AR, because, and this is probably a broader point for what we do at Phunware. Like, you want the technology to take a back seat to the experience.
Exactly. Yeah.
You don't want, so many engineers, so many companies are just, they're obsessed with telling you how the sausage is made.
Yes.
No, people just want to eat a sausage. Like, they don't want to know that. And so if you can get AR and VR to be about the experience and not about AR, VR, because you're doing something that delights customers, then you'll see adoption.
Yes, because we see so much almost like a letter cell of we're an AI powered VR company on the blockchain, with
and you lost people at that point.
But
I don't even know what you're talking about
every
anymore.
company's almost based on raising VC capital, which is now the 2-letter word, you know?
Yeah.
But the consumers, they're like, I don't know what to do with this.
Exactly right.
So that's incredible. And is the video you showed me earlier, is it publicly available, or is it
not yet? So it's kind of our concept sketch of what we want to do and how we want to engage it. But hopefully we'll have something available for public consumption here pretty soon. And so
if you have something, maybe we can blend it over. To give a little view of what it's what we're talking about.
Actually, I have another one that's much shorter that I'll make sure I send to you.
Amazing.
It's actually tied to Phuncoin itself.
Sweet. So let me ask you a couple of rapid fire questions before we wrap it up. So number one, what is the thing you're most excited about the future?
Decentralization.
Decentralization
of everything. And for us personally, it's data. So right now you have kind of this insidious nature of these data oligarchs in the middle where everybody's kind of exploiting your data. And the reality is your data should be an inalienable human right. You created it, you should own it, you should control it, and if anybody gets compensated for it, it should be you. But decentralization is a much broader idea.
Yes.
It's the elegant part of Bitcoin is you can't raid that office. You can't destroy it. It exists because people want it to exist.
Shut it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Can't kill the founder.
And once you have that in various aspects of life, it forces people to act in a different way. It forces people to behave in a different way because they've lost a little bit of that control, and that's powerful. Decentralization is a huge idea. It doesn't really matter who wins in the end, like whether it's blockchain or some other thing.
Yeah.
The idea of distributing power across multiple different sources and then having an immutable ledger tied to that is huge.
I had a whole video series on futuristic subject, and almost every single time the verdict was we need to decentralize. Because whether it's AI in the hands of one single company like Google, crazy. Data
scary.
and privacy in the hand of one single company, crazy.
Experience.
The one wild one was transportation. If we stop having cars and everything's powered by Uber, they can control who's getting
who's going where.
You're banned. You can't go anywhere.
Exactly.
Anymore, Or you get in the car, door's locked, we're taking somewhere else. It's
so true.
So in my opinion, decentralize everything.
Absolutely.
Love it. Second question. There is, in a world full of predictions where everybody has an opinion about the future, and there's just a lot of stuff. What is one sage voice that you'd like to listen to or read? Somebody you pay attention to, you say, they actually know what they're talking about.
Wow, that's a great question. A measured voice. Honestly, it's sad. I don't know what that would be. Quite frankly, I don't know what that would be in business. I tend to, if I spend time listening to anybody, it's typically someone more from the professional development and motivation space. And so whether it's it sounds silly, but whether it's the the Gary V's of the world or Tony Robbins of the world, Ed Milet's in the world. Like for me, business is business.
Yeah.
But if you're not in the right state of mind and you don't have that entrepreneurial spirit and you don't have that positivity and also that gratitude, you're never going to be successful in business.
Yes.
If it's all about just money and it's all about you, you're going to do things that either undermine your business or undermine your own code of ethics, and those things don't ever last. And so for me, the guiding light and the voices that I listen to actually have nothing to do with business, but they help me be better at business. And so I love, waking up and listening to somebody who has something, motivational to say about how to be a good person, but also a good business person, how to be the best version of yourself. And so all of those kind of, that's how I like to be influenced.
Because I mean, if anything, what you're saying is that you're not looking for the answer outside, you're looking towards people that help you find the answer inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
And a lot of the pride mindset that even I look to people like, whether it's Kurzweil, Peter Diamandis. I know Peter's a huge, big friend with Tony, right?
Sure.
So
absolutely.
So even they, look towards someone like Tony that helps them find that in the inside.
Absolutely.
Love the answer. So I guess it's a similar question, but favorite book?
Ooh, favorite book? Fiction or nonfiction? It's probably get in trouble for saying this because if anybody's ever read it, it usually raises eyebrows. But I love 48 Laws of Power.
Oh, I love that too.
I mean,
it's dark, but I love it.
It is because it's real. There is a very, it's not the most touchy-feely book. It's not the most, turn the other cheek, love your neighbor. But if people are honest with themselves and they really kind of, say, it's accurate. I mean, it's pretty damn accurate with how people engage with other people and how you can exert influence. Now, the key is to use it for good, not evil, right?
Intention matters.
Exactly. I love that. We just talked about this last week, and it was at the Human Gathering in Malibu, and we talked a lot about intention and what you do with kind of the resources you bring to bear. But I've always loved Robert Greene, and I like the way. Now, on the slightly fiction but still nonfiction, a book that everyone should have to read just about the human spirit. It's called Heart of a Soldier. And so it's a guy by James Stewart, and it's the story of Rick Rescorla. And if you ever look at that, that book, We Were Soldiers Once? There's someone on the cover of it, and he's running through the Iron Drink Valley during Vietnam, but that guy is Rick Rescorla. Rick Rescorla would go on to be a security, I think he was head of security for either JP Morgan or Goldman Sachs. I think it was JP Morgan. But he got all of the employees out of the World Trade Center after it was attacked, and he went back in to save someone else, and I'll tell you what happened. But everyone usually knows about kind of his story, but his life story and his life journey, it'll be made into a movie. It's one of the most incredible books. I still get chills thinking about it.
Say the name again of the book?
It's called Heart of a Soldier.
Heart of a Soldier.
And it's by James Stewart, and it's incredible.
Have to check it out. And back to a comment about the 48 Laws of Power, Dan Earth said, if you can't beat them, join them.
Yeah.
But in a way, it's if we want to have a chance at, for example, beating the bad guys, and we'll use specific methods, we got to be willing to at least use those methods for good. Yeah. Because otherwise, we stand no chance.
It's a very, people don't like to hear it, but and quite frankly, we see it in the politics all the time.
Yes.
Whether you're Republican or Democrat doesn't matter. The Republicans have gotten very good at winning, and they'll win on platforms that arguably are questionable. I mean, whether or not someone should win on a platform of building a wall, it's largely arbitrary. It wasn't about the wall; it was about captivating people's imagination about a story. It's a bullshit story. It's a bullshit answer, but that's largely how the Republicans have, from Karl Rove basically made it. I don't agree with him. I don't support him, but incredible understanding of human psychology. And so it doesn't do Democrats any good to have potentially better ideas if you can't get in office to execute better ideas. And so whether it's business, politics, anything else, if you have something to give, if you have some talent that you want to offer to the world, dying on the hill or falling on your sword or not providing that to the world, you've done. It doesn't really matter at that point. Yeah, exactly. So it's all about execution. What do you do with your thoughts, with your ideas, and how do you get them out there? And I think that's one thing that a lot of people, it's being the benevolent dictator. If you can have the control, can you do something good with it? And we always talk about that a little bit too. So our knowledge graph, our central repository of information. We are a central authority ourselves. We have to be a benevolent central authority until people are ready to take that power for themselves, and we want to give them that. So we will say, listen, we'll curate all this data, we'll curate your Phunware ID, we'll curate all this information from you, but when you're ready, we want you to have it, and so let us know. Because like right now, people are still wrestling with this idea that your own data should be a right. But we hope that sooner rather than later, people will wake up to the fact that it should be controlled by them.
Decentralized. It's just like it went from software development company, software service to data.
Exactly.
There's always phase, and it's much easier going from having it built and then decentralizing. Then there's so many almost like abstract concepts out there right now. Where they're trying to be the final version before they're even ready to be the final version.
Exactly. Well said.
And that brings us to the final question: what do you think the world in 2050 looks like?
Ooh, man. I'm not I do believe in the capacity for human beings to surprise and to show more potential than possibly we sometimes give them credit for. Not to jump on a soapbox, but climate change concerns me, and that is, if we don't wake up to that, there are people who would try to convince people that it's hocus pocus, and it's not hocus pocus. It's science, and it exists. But I truly believe, innovation. If I'm a little bit on the Elon Musk side of things, like I do worry a little bit about our fascination with AI. Like there is, as long as it's the right protocols are in place, I do think 2050 will be better than we think it will be. I think that we're becoming so intrinsically linked as a globe that the war doesn't make as much sense. And if you start to introduce these ideas, so I was in the military for 10 years.
You look like it.
When people are fighting, you make decisions differently. I think that nobody wants to go to war at this level. We have the weapons, and the scale is too great that there's kind of this mutually assured destruction component. Like, we're not going to go to war with China. Like, China doesn't want to go to war with us.
And I think this is a factor of social media, because in the past, people used to demonize the enemy. We made them sound like animals. But that's impossible.
Now you have all this information. Exactly. They want the same things that we want. They want to be safe, and they want they want the ATM to keep spitting dollars or whatever currency they use. And so I think we begin to become closer as a community. And if we can handle humanitarian crisis, overpopulation, and climate change, I think that technology will allow us to make that shift to take care of more people at scale. So I have a lot, I'm more bullish on society in the long term than most people, but I'm a romantic at heart. So I believe in the capacity of people to do amazing things when put to the test. I think we have a lot of big challenges that face us, specifically those two: overpopulation, not having enough resources for enough people. But the reality is we kind of do. And I think innovation will go to solve that. You see what people are doing with wind and solar. So I'd like us to clean up the oceans, first and foremost, continue to adopt clean energy, continue to address climate change, and really not forget, the underserved. I think there's a lot of ways people can help each other, and a little bit goes a long way. I always say, something to someone could be anything, or everything. And so, little acts of kindness and being aware, which I think, to your point, the more information we have and the more we disseminate information, the more people realize that there's a lot that can be done to kind of help society, and I think that'll position us well for long-term prosperity.
I love that answer, because that is very different from what Dan said. Dan thinks there's going to be aliens and machines taking over. So and that's a beautiful thing.
Here's I always say, if you've ever read 0 to 1 by Peter Thiel, so he always asks every new employee kind of what's your one non-consensus thought. It sounds kind of weird and counterintuitive, but I believe our own ego and our own need for absolute control will actually mitigate that threat. Because this idea that we want to just turn everything over to machines, we are very egotistical. People don't want to turn over power to other people, much less to a machine. And so I can see our own desire for control not allowing us to give control over to anything inherently. There's always going to be, think about it.
And the first time a machine makes a decision without human, they shut that off.
Yeah, exactly. Look at what happened with Google when the AI started writing its own language, and what do? They shut it off, and they completely pull the plug. So I think people always naturally in the back of their mind,
have this idea, what if this goes badly, and then how do we pull the plug? I jokingly, I was going to write a paper on it, I jokingly wonder if Hollywood has literally saved mankind, because if I would
with all the wars.
Exactly, when I was in the military, I always thought, like, if somebody came up to me and said, hey, we want to turn over all our defense systems to this AI, and we want you to help work on it, I'd be like, I saw this in a movie once. I don't think that's a good idea. But I wonder if we haven't really, turned a corner in terms of thinking through. I'm honestly more worried about like an accidental biological threat. It's that one thing where someone's trying to cure cancer, they splice the wrong DNA and something. Not to go all zombie apocalypse on me, but like that actually concerns me more than machines. So just people trying to do it's the nuclear bomb. I mean, it's literally you're trying to do something for society that turns into something catastrophic. So
100%. So for you, the three big takeaways for me is like 1, decentralize, 2, take care of the environment, and 3, lead with intent, like right intention and integrity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.